He lied about everything, the perfect man, until he wasn't. They say love makes you blind. But no one ever told me it could make you stupid. I met Ethan on a rainy Tuesday outside a bookstore. He held the door open for me, smiled like he had nothing to hide. And I, like the fool I was, fell hard. He was everything a woman could want: tall, confident, ambitious, and oh so attentive. He remembered the smallest things: how I took my coffee, what color I hated on rainy days, the way I flinched when someone raised their voice. He made me feel seen. He made me feel safe. I thought I had finally found someone who wouldn't hurt me. But the thing about perfect men, they're always hiding something. We got married 2 years after we met. A small wedding, just close friends and family. He cried during his vows, said I was his world, promised he'd never lie to me. God, if I could go back and slap myself in that moment, I would. Because behind that soft voice, that steady gaze, and that golden wedding band was a man who had mastered the art of betrayal. At first, it was little things. Late nights at work, missed calls, a new password on his phone. I asked. He always had a reason, a good one too. Baby, I'm doing this for us. I'm just tired, not hiding anything. You're being paranoid. I believed him again and again. Because when you love someone, you don't count the cracks in the glass. You just keep drinking the poison. The truth slapped me in the face by accident. One evening, he was in the shower. His phone buzzed twice. Then again, I never checked his phone before, not once in 5 years. But something in me snapped that night. I picked it up. The message on the screen burned into my mind. Last night was incredible. I still taste you on my lips. My hands went cold, my knees buckled. I couldn't breathe. I didn't confront him right away. No, I needed to know more. I opened the thread. There were hundreds of messages, photos, voice notes, videos. Her name was Natalie. She was young. Young, pretty, desperate. And Ethan, he wasn't just sleeping with her. He was telling her he loved her. He was promising to leave me. He was laughing about me. He called me the boring wife. I stared at that phone for hours, reading every word. My tears didn't fall right away. They came later. In the dark, alone, curled up in the closet, like a wounded animal. The next morning, and I made him breakfast. Pancakes, his favorite, bacon, extra crispy, black coffee. He kissed me on the cheek, told me I was the best wife in the world. I smiled, because now I had a plan. This wasn't just going to be a breakup, no. This was going to be an execution. I started small, quiet, strategic. I made copies of every message, backed up every photo, forwarded everything to a private email. I hired a private investigator, and what he found? Ethan wasn't just cheating. He was embezzling money from the company we built together. He had drained over $100,000 from our shared accounts, hiding it under shell corporations, paying for Natalie's new apartment, funding weekend getaways, all while telling me we needed to save. I didn't cry anymore. I got angry, folks deleting. My lawyer was a woman named Jenna, sharp, precise, ruthless. She said, we'll destroy him. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. At night, Ethan still kissed me, still held me in bed, still whispered lies in the dark. And I kissed him back. I whispered too. But mine were words of war. He lied about everything. She doesn't even know what's coming. At night, I still kissed him. I still cooked his dinner. I even told him I loved him. But inside, I was counting down the days until it would all fall apart. For him, not me. Natalie, his little side project, had no idea either. She thought she was winning. She sent him selfies in lingerie, voicemails with her whispering, I miss you. And once, she even said, I can't wait to wear white for you. Cute, delusional. Meanwhile, I met with Jenna every week. We built a case so tight it would choke him in court. Financial fraud, emotional abuse, marital betrayal, breach of business contract. Jenna looked at the documents and smirked. When we're done, he won't even afford a bus ticket to see his little girlfriend. I laughed, a real laugh. The first in months. But I wasn't finished, not yet. Because I didn't want to just expose him legally. I wanted to break him publicly. So I planned the perfect night. His birthday, a big dinner, friends, family, business partners. Everyone he cared about or pretended to. I rented a private room at his favorite restaurant, dim lights, candle centerpieces, fancy wine. He walked in, smiling like a king, kissed me on the cheek. You're amazing, he said. I know, I replied. Dinner was perfect. He was glowing, laughing, toasting. He even held my hand under the table. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Oh, he was right, he didn't. When dessert was served, I stood up, tapped by my glass. Everyone turned to me. Before we dive into the cake, I smiled. I have something special for Ethan. He looked surprised, intrigued, flattered. I handed the waiter a flash drive. He plugged it into the TV on the wall. The screen flickered. And then the messages began, hundreds of them, on full screen. Ethan and Natalie, naked photos, voicemails, texts. And then that's it. Every single lie, right there, in front of everyone. Gasps, laughter, and then silence. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. His mother stood up. His business partner pushed back his chair and left. Natalie's photos paused on screen. One of her saying, "When will she be out of the picture?" Irony. I was never out of the picture. I was the one holding the camera. Ethan's face turned white, then red, then gray. He looked at me with wild eyes. "What the hell is this?" Hey, bye. I calmly sipped my wine. "Your birthday present." He lunged toward the flash drive. Jenna stood up behind me. "Touch that, and I swear to God you'll spend the night in a cell," yeah, said coldly. He froze. People began to leave, one by one, muttering. Laughing, I turned to him. "It's not over." I hissed. I smiled sweetly. "No, Ethan, it's just beginning." Later that night, as I walked to my car, I received a message. "Unknown number. You think this is over? You don't even know what I'm capable of." I stared at it, and for a moment, I felt something I hadn't in months. Not fear, excitement, because now he was cornered. And cornered animals, they make mistakes. He lied about everything the women before me. The flash drive burned in my hand. No label, no name, no explanation. Just a note scrawled in black ink. "You were never the only one he lied to." I stared at it for hours, pacing, heart racing, because part of me knew this wasn't over. Ethan had left a trail behind him, a trail of broken promises, bruised hearts, and maybe something worse. I finally plugged it in, and what I saw made my blood turn to ice. Dozens of video files, each named after a woman. Some I recognized, some I didn't. Each one began the same way. A face in front of a camera. Tired, angry, hurt. They told stories. About him. One woman spoke with a scar on her cheek, another with a black eye she tried to hide behind sunglasses. One was pregnant, alone. Another said she still couldn't leave her house without checking over her shoulder. He wasn't just a cheater. He was a predator. The last video was from someone named Lena. She looked older, stronger, like someone who'd survived a war. She stared into the camera and said, "He doesn't just break hearts, he breaks people." And then the twist. She had been married to him. Before me. I dug deeper. Marriage license, court records, police reports. She had filed for divorce. But he threatened her, blackmailed her, ruined her credit. She disappeared. Until now. I reached out, and she replied within minutes. We met at a small diner, far from everything. She walked in wearing sunglasses and a hoodie, like she still had to hide. But when she pulled them off, I saw something in her eyes. Me, before. We sat, talked, compared timelines. He had been married to 3 women, engaged to 2 others, all while building a network of lies, fake businesses, secret accounts, multiple identities. He was a professional manipulator. Lena leaned across the table. "We need to stop him together." And I smiled, not the broken smile I used to wear, the real one, the one that says, "You messed with the wrong woman." We made calls, reached out to the women on the flash drive. Some were scared, some were angry, some were ready to burn his world to the ground. And one by one, they said yes. We weren't victims anymore. We were survivors. And now, we were an army. Jenna helped us build a case, a joint lawsuit. Not just for financial fraud, not just for emotional abuse, but for criminal conspiracy. Because Ethan had forged documents, filed fake taxes, used stolen identities. This was no longer just divorce. This was federal. And then he disappeared. Gone. Vanished like smoke. His apartment empty, phone disconnected, bank accounts frozen. It was like he knew, like he was watching. But we weren't afraid. Because this time, he wouldn't be hiding forever. 2 weeks later, I got another letter. No return address. Inside, a single photo. A picture of me. Taken from across the street. At night, I stared at it, my hands trembling. Not in fear. In fury. Because he was still playing games. Still watching. Still trying to control. I texted Lynn, sent the photo. Her reply came instantly. "Let's finish this, sis. Let's chat about everything the hunt begins." The photo shook me, not because of fear, but because it meant one thing. He was watching. Still, even after everything, after court, after Natalie, after the women before me, he was still playing games. But what Ethan didn't realize was that the rules had changed. This wasn't a game anymore. This was a manhunt. I forwarded the photo to Jenna. She ran it through metadata tracing. The timestamp, angle, and resolution suggested it had been taken from a nearby rooftop 2 blocks away. It wasn't random. It was planned, calculated, just like he always was. Lena and I met that night in an underground garage. No cameras, no wires, just us. And the plan. We weren't going to the police, not yet, because Ethan was good at slipping through cracks. He manipulated paperwork like origami, twisted reality like a magician. No, we needed to bring him out, expose him. In a way, no system could protect him. We reached out to Natalie, then to every woman from the flash drive who agreed to fight, and we launched something Ethan would never expect, a podcast, titled The Women He Broke. Each episode was a story. Raw, real, unfiltered. No names, no direct accusations. Just the truth. And the world listened. Within 72 hours, we had over 100,000 streams. Comments flooded in. Women from other states began messaging us. I think he did this to me too. His name wasn't Ethan, man, but it was him. He used a different last name, but same voice, same eyes. We had started a storm. And Ethan, he couldn't run from a storm. Then one night, Lena got a call. Blocked a number, she answered, and froze. Then put it on speaker. It was him. You think this makes you brave? His voice was low, controlled. You think turning the world against me will save you? Lena's eyes burned with rage. I made you. You were nothing before me. I leaned in, took the phone. I'm still standing. That's more than I can say for you. He laughed. Cold. You're smart, but I'm smarter. You've always been 10 steps behind. Click. The line went dead. But that call, it was a mistake because Jenna had it traced. Location, Chicago. Hotel, downtown, mid-range under a fake name. Room 407. Lena looked at me. I looked back, and we nodded. No hesitation. No fear. Just fire. We flew out that night. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't post. Didn't breathe a word. Because if he knew, he'd vanish again. We checked in across the hall. Watched room 407. Lights on, lights off, shadows moving. We waited. Hours. Then finally, he stepped out. Ethan. Alive. And for the first time, looking over his shoulder, I wanted to run, to scream, to claw his face with everything he took from me. But Lena stopped me. Not yet, she whispered. Let him come to us. And he did. 2 nights later, we saw him head to the hotel bar, alone. No mask, no hoodie, just a man who thought the world was still under his thumb. Lena sat at the bar first. Unrecognizable, new hair, new eyes, new name. Then me. Different enough to pass, same fire burning underneath. We watched him flirt, smile, lie, to a new woman. Another target, another victim in progress. That's when I felt it. Not rage, not revenge, but clarity. This man would never stop. He would never change. So I did what I had to do, Tess. I walked up, looked him dead in the eyes, and said, smile for the camera, because behind me, Jenna had already coordinated the sting. Police entered, quiet, precise. He didn't even have time to react. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists, and for the first time in his life, Ethan looked afraid. He screamed, called me names, said I set him up. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. I just looked at him and whispered, checkmate. He lied about everything. The verdict. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, former victims, strangers who had followed the podcast. Everyone wanted to see the man behind the mask, the charmer, the manipulator, the predator. Now just a criminal in cuffs. Ethan sat at the defense table, eyes hollow, hair messy, jaw clenched, suit wrinkled like the lies he wrapped around his life. He didn't look like a man anymore. He looked like a shadow of himself. I sat with Jenna and Lena at the front row. Natalie was there too. She wasn't the same girl I once hated. She was steel now, and beside her, 5 other women, all survivors. All brave. All ready. The judge walked in. The room fell silent. Gentlemen and ladies of the jury, have you reached a verdict? A pause. Then the foreman stood. We have, Your Honor. My heart slammed against my chest, faster, harder. This was it. Everything we had fought for. everything he tried to bury. On the count of fraud, guilty. On the count of identity theft, guilty. On the count of aggravated coercion, guilty. On the count of emotional abuse and manipulation, guilty. Each word was a dagger, but not in my heart, in his. I didn't cry, I didn't cheer. I just breathed in. For the first time, in years, the judge turned to him. Mr. Bennett, Ethan's real last name, not the 5 others he used. This court sentences you to 22 years in federal prison, without the possibility of parole for the first 15. Gasps filled the room. He slumped, broken, defeated. Done. The judge nodded toward us. You're free to deliver a victim impact statement if you wish. I stood, every eye turned toward me. I walked to the front, looked him in the eye, and said, you made me feel like nothing. You gaslit me. You tore me down so you could feel powerful, but I'm still standing. My voice is louder now than it has ever been. You tried to make me small, but now the world sees you for what you are. A coward, a con, and a man who never understood what real love, trust, or loyalty means. You thought you could break me, but all you did was wake me up. I turned to the judge. Thank you, not just for justice, but for letting women like us be heard. And with that, I walked back, head high, soul clean. Outside, the crowd applauded. Not for me, but for all of us. For every woman who was told to be quiet, to stay small, to just forgive. No more. Later that night, we gathered. In Lena's apartment, wine, laughter, relief. Not because we won, but because we reclaimed what he stole. Ourselves. The podcast continued. But now, it wasn't about him. It was about healing. About stories of power. About rising. One day, I got a letter. From prison. It was from Ethan. I never opened it. I burned it. Let the ashes carry his lies far away. Because I didn't need closure from him. I had created it for myself. The end.